Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Work Study Supervisor training. I'm Josh Leonard. With me today is Thomas Harper. Both of us run the Work Study program for the Office of Scholarships and Student Aid. We're very excited to have you with us this morning as we talk about work study. For those of you who are new to the program, this is a very exciting presentation for you as we're going to review all of our basics, talk about some of our annual updates, and for everyone who's returning, it's a great refresher. Especially with the updates in response to our current COVID plans. In addition to those pieces this morning, we are also going to briefly review how to post a job, and we're going to do something that we've never done before. We are actually going to walk through a live demonstration of a job posting, so you can see exactly what it looks like, and potentially, if you have your job prepared, follow along and have your job posted this morning. So, without further ado, here we go. Here is our plan for the day. We're going to take a quick look at the program, including the calendar dates, the payroll cycle, training and registration for those of you who may not be current work study supervisors. As I said, we're going to look at our updates, especially our COVID-19 response. We're going to talk a little bit about the rules and regulations. Briefly, about 3 slides. This is majorly covering things that people miss or things that people really need a reminder on. We're going to talk about the planning, the prep work of creating a job posting, all the skull sweat that needs to be done before you get into the system. As I mentioned, then we're going to do a live demonstration of posting, and for those of you who are returning, how to update properly, because we do have some questions about that every year. And then we're going to save a few minutes to talk about our future sessions, and we will go off the recording for our Q&A. Again, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the chat window. Thomas is going to be answering those as they come up. So let's start with a quick look at the big parts of our program. For those of you who are registered or are thinking about becoming registered, a few steps to you. The first one is really to look at the program and decide whether or not it is a good fit. We like to think the work study program is beneficial for virtually everyone on this campus, student, supervisor alike. However, we do recognize that not every position is ideally suited because the federal work study program comes with federal regulations, which can be a bit restrictive some days. So take a look at the program. The rules and regulations will clarify this a little bit, but whether it's a good fit for your position. And then every year, every supervisor has to complete 2 pieces of training. These are both online. I'll show you the site in just a second. They are a regulatory and logistical training and a JobX training, so you know how to use the software to post positions, review candidates, and hire students. And then there is a quiz every year, which everyone has to obtain a 100% score on. I promise you, those of you who've been with us for a while know this. If you just read carefully, this quiz is very, very simple. We did introduce a 2-part question this year, so we're seeing some 95s. Make sure you read all the way through the quiz before you answer. That is a gift from me to you for taking time out to sit here with us this morning. If you are a new supervisor, there is a one-time registration that you will need to fill out. This is because JobX is a third-party software and does not connect to anything at UNC. We have to collect your information in order to set up a profile for you. And once you've completed all those steps, you will gain full access to the JobX system and be ready to post jobs for the upcoming academic year. As mentioned, this is the site I was talking about where all of our training and quizzes are. The URL is here. If you want to take a quick screenshot, you can put that in. I can also, in the chat window, drop off a link to you. This is a quick guide that I sent the link to that includes all the information on the previous slide, as well as links to our Sakai site. If you would like to add this site to your Sakai pages, if you go to sakai.unc.edu, you can see on the screen under the Home tab, there is a worksite set up where you can add pages permanently. And the name of this page is the Federal Work Study Supervisor Training. Type that in, hit search, and you will be linked to it as long as you go back into Sakai. All right, moving on. This is what our Sakai page actually looks like. Of course, you won't have these little edit bars. It'll be a little clearer for you to read. But you'll note this site does contain links to, again, that regulatory logistical training, the supervisor JobX training on how to use our software to post jobs, review applicants, hire students, a link to the quiz here. If you're new, there's the link to the one-time registration form, and we include a link to our supervisor resources page on JobX. This has a lot of really great trainings and presentations, documents to help you with everything from conceptualizing a position down through doing evaluations and the end of the year reconciliation, the during year reconciliation as you track student earnings. So talking about this, let's look at our calendar for the year. We did open up the JobX site to allow postings on June 1st. We were able to get our software updates for the year end rather quickly this year. So we started our summer cycle now, which means if you are ready, you can go ahead and start posting your positions now. We will take positions, both Federal Work Study and Carolina Works, our two different programs, through July 3rd. That is our priority date. After that time, we will still take positions. Now, in recognition of the logistical issues that COVID is causing and the uncertainty around returning to campus and whether departments will need students, we are allowing fall postings through November 1st. That is a couple months after our normal deadline. We know situations may change, so we wanted to allow that flexibility this year. But if at all possible, we do ask that you post your position by July 3rd. This ensures that we can have it up and inspected and send you a confirmation that it is done by 7/17 when our early rehire program begins, or 7/20 when all students gain access. Please note, if you would like to use early rehire, this is a program wherein supervisors can rehire students back to the same or similar jobs that they held last year. You have to have your job posted by July 3rd. This program allows you to get those students into your system, hired, and your job delisted, so you don't have other applicants that you have to respond to if you're not going to be hiring any new students. Otherwise, the positions will all go live on July 20th, and all the students will be available and eligible to see your positions and apply to them at that point. Please note, if you don't get an email prior to this point and you've submitted your job, we haven't had a chance to inspect it, or it has been sent to the wrong location and we don't know that you're waiting on us to inspect it. We will review exactly how to ensure that your positions are up for inspection a little later in this presentation. So students begin applying. Students can be reviewed, their applications can be reviewed, they can be interviewed, and they can be hired on the same day that they become available. For most students, this is going to be July 20th. We are not asking supervisors to wait a day or 2 days as we have in previous years because the timeline has been accelerated. Now, after you hire a student before they can begin work, I want to point out that they do need to go through an onboarding process, including, most importantly, the I-9. So we can validate their eligibility for employment, payroll training, the W-4, the NC-4. This is normally done by your business or HR officer for your department. Your responsibility is simply to connect the student with HR or business and to ensure that the process has been completed before they start work, which can happen on August 3rd this year. We wanted to move this up, but we have summer payroll that runs through August 2nd. So August 3rd will be the first day that students can work for the fall term. Please note, this is before the beginning of school. So you are more than welcome to have these students begin before they've actually commenced their classes. Now, keeping in mind, the university is stopping the fall semester on November 24th, which is the last day students can work for the fall term. Spring will start up on, at this point, January 6th. Again, the times we're living in, that date is subject to change. We don't know, but we suspect right now spring positions will start July 6th, and they will run through May 4th or May 7th if you're hiring through Carolina Works. Again, just a quick reminder, because this is anticipated to be an issue, the student must complete their I-9, W-4, NC-4 before they are able to start, regardless of their actual date of hire and where we are at in this process. Also, as in previous years, if you are hiring a student for a fall and spring position, which the majority of our positions are for fall and spring, these dates about stopping for the fall term and starting for the spring term, you can effectively ignore that. Students hired to fall and spring who will be enrolled at UNC for fall and spring can work from August 3rd through May 4th or May 7th if they're Carolina Works, with no gaps in between. So it is to your advantage, of course, to have the student set up for a fall spring position where possible. And then we will hopefully be able to have a summer program as we have done the last 2 years. We're hoping to send announcements out about that on March 15th. Summer funding is contingent, of course, on having funding, having a summer program is, of course, contingent on having summer funding. So that is normally something we have to wait until March to have a bead on. All right, as a quick review, we have two different types of programs. We have Federal Work Study and Carolina Works. Federal Work Study is funded in large part by the Federal Work Study program that is put out by the Department of Education every year. There are some state funds and a little bit of institutional mix in there, and when I say a little, I mean about half. We have in the past years switched to a program where we are requiring an employer match, and this year that amount is 30%. So our program will continue to provide 100% of the students' wages up front, and then we will ask for the 30% employer match after the fact through the CBM system. Now, Federal Work Study is fall and spring. It has a larger population of about 5,000 students, and it, of course, has some tighter restrictions, as I mentioned. Carolina Works is funded not by the federal government, but by private alumni and donors, and the employer at a 50-50 match. Here we go. Talking about the Carolina Works, apologies for the short break there. The big difference is the funding source is different. It is not federal or state derived. It is 100% funded by private donations and the employer. We do have a 50-50 employer match as part of this. This is how we were able to raise the funds, showing that it was an equal partnership between these donors and the departments providing student employment. In addition to being a fall spring program, it does offer summer, which is a huge advantage. We do normally have dozens or hundreds of students who are interested in continuing their work during the summer, and this allows us to do so. And it is a much smaller population because it is a much smaller fund. And again, no federal money, looser restrictions. So things like driving, working with some relaxed supervision, all allowed under Carolina Works. If you have any questions, of course, the information is in the training. Or as always, you can email Thomas and I at work-study@unc.edu. We're more than happy to answer your questions that way. And again, I'll probably repeat our address a few dozen more times in this presentation. The good point for all of you here, it is the exact same training. It is the same job posting and hiring. It is the exact same team supporting it. It is the exact same logistics and payroll. Everything that you are going through today allows you to work under both Federal Work Study and Carolina Works programs. So there is no additional steps to Carolina Works. It really is just a different pot of money and population of students. All right, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about pay. This is one of the areas that a lot of students and supervisors have questions. Let me walk you through it. You're probably familiar with these first three steps. Students work, they put information in TIM, and they get paid. Same for every employee throughout UNC, student, faculty, staff, temporary, permanent, all of us, same three steps here. The part you may not know about is what happens after that. Once the payroll is dispersed, there's some information generated in our accounting servers. That information has to be gathered up and delivered to my team. We take that information and perform work-study reconciliation. This is a point where we can communicate with you as supervisors about how your students are doing in terms of their earnings, letting you know if they are getting close to their limits or potentially have exceeded their award amounts and we need to take action. It's also a way for us to hopefully in January send out a messaging and get everybody a check-in point. And the other thing this allows is it allows us to feed earnings information back into the JobX system so that you as supervisors have a way to go in and monitor student earnings. If you're not following our strong recommendation tracking it, this will give you a way to come back in and check on the information from time to time. And then we move into sort of our wage match part after the reconciliation. Thomas and I actually go out and spend a few hours creating a file for CBM. It's an acronym for Campus Billing Management. It's a system used throughout campus to move around wages and earnings and billings. That information is uploaded to the CBM system on the 14th, at which point it becomes visible to your department. Normally this is handled by, again, your billing officer or HR. And then that actually gets processed on the 21st. In between the 14th and the 21st, CBM charges can be pointed at different funding sources. They can be altered, they can be shifted around. But at the 21st, they go through, and then we have to start using a different system of moving that funding around. So here is the entire overview of from when students begin working through the finalization of the wage match. One thing I'd like to point out, between this student working and payroll disbursement, there can be, 2 to 3, 4 weeks. Reconciliation always adds on at least a few days, potentially another few weeks to get the accounting data. During the COVID outbreak early days, it was taking us, in some cases, over a month to get this information. So there is a delay to this system. We do not have real-time information about student earnings, so we do ask that supervisors track this information. Every time you approve a timesheet, we have tools that allow you to simply move that information into an Excel workbook, and you will have an up to the pay period set of information on the student's earnings to prevent over earnings. Moving on. So this is our normal annual update slide. We wanted to do a little something different. So here is our annual and COVID update slide. I hope everyone is getting comfortable with their masks because we're going to be in them for a while, it looks like. All right, so let's start with the non-COVID updates. The big one this year is that our JobX site was updated. The good part of that is there's really no change to functionality or processes. If you are familiar with how the site works, you are in previous years, you're familiar with how it works today. It just looks different. It's a lot easier to navigate. It has been updated to increase accessibility for people with different abilities, so we can be more accessible to students, supervisors, faculty, staff across the university in their usage of the website. Totally coincidentally, this is also the year that Scholarships and Student Aid built a new website for ourselves and our students. We are in the process of moving data from JobX to our OSSA website for students. That information, because we did our update during the year, we have not moved all the student data over because there are still some summer students using it, but that student information will be moved in July when the summer program ends back over to the OSSA website. We are currently trying to figure out with our communications team whether the supervisor information will be moving, but for right now, all of the supervisor resources that you are used to are on the JobX website under the supervisor resources page. The other big one, as I mentioned a couple times already, the employer share for federal work study this year is moving from 15 to 30%. I have zero indications that it will ever go up again. It looks like we're going to be at 30% for a while. Hopefully that will balance the budget and allow us to continue offering work study to the expanded population that is requesting it these days. Of course, we will keep you up to date if there are any changes, but again, for right now, no anticipation of that moving off of 30% in the near future. All right, COVID updates. A few different things. For those who are our off-campus community service partners on the call, we are not doing site visits this year. Those of you on campus don't have to worry. We've never done site visits. We don't go to your sites for an annual check, but because we are trying to social distance, we will not be visiting our sites. We still will be doing all of our regular documentation. We just won't be collecting it in person. Previously mentioned, fall positions. You can post them, revise them, update them, change them through November 1st this year. November 1st is the day we actually start going live with our spring postings. So after that, we felt it was a bit superfluous to be adjusting fall and spring. But again, if you don't know where you're at in terms of how many students you might need or what work you might need or whether the work is going to be more on campus or virtual, you have until November 1st to post these positions. Of course, we would encourage you to post them as early as possible to ensure that you have the maximum number of students see your position possible. The next one's sort of a big change. Those of you who were around this spring know that we started allowing federal work study positions to work virtually, something we had not been able to offer in the past. We are going to continue that trend, as we know there are students who will not be returning to campus for the fall semester. So federal work study and Carolina Works positions this year can be done virtually. You'll note in the job types we have updated it so that all positions either say in person or virtual. And here's the rule. We are asking if there is any work on campus required. And I don't mean simply just dropping something off or completing your paperwork. That's something that you can post in the position description, but I mean actual work duties on campus. The position needs to be listed as on campus. Regardless of what percentage can be done or will be done virtually, if there's a mandated on-campus period where students have to come in for training or duties, it needs to be listed as an on-campus position. Virtual positions will still require the I-9. Again, we have remote I-9 capabilities as a university, and we are still going to require you as supervisors to track employees' work and to know when students begin and end working their shifts in virtual positions. We can talk about a few different ways to do that a little later on. We are, this last point, talking about what to do in case of a campus closure. Last year, we were able to offer students who weren't able to continue their on-campus positions the ability to either work remotely, or in some cases, we offered them funding in place of their work study if they weren't able to continue working their job on campus. We are hopefully putting a plan together around that. We don't have any finalization or details. Right now, the campus is planning on being open for the remainder of the year, so we are planning on the work study program proceeding as normally, but we are putting together contingency plans for that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about rules and regulations. There's a lot of them, as you might imagine. The left side is simply the index for federal work study things out of the FSA handbook. The right side is the summary of the federal work study program for the UNC program. It's a lot. I have to read it every year. I don't want to inflict that on everybody else, besides Thomas, because he's in the boat with me on this one. So we summarize this down. We restrict this from a few hundred pages to 3 items: the regulatory training, the Job Act Supervisor training, and there's an annual update guide. All of these are posted to the Supervisor Resources website. Some of you may be asking why we haven't asked you to read the annual update guide. Quite frankly, it's the quiz. So if you are taking the quiz and getting your 100%, you are reviewing the information in the annual update guide. All right. Brief overview of the regulations, 2 slides, pulling out the ones that people miss and the most important ones. We're going to talk about them right here. The Federal Work Study Program is a need-based program. We cannot offer it to every student as much as we would like to. They have to demonstrate financial need. If you have a student that you are questioning whether or not they can receive work study, please have them reach out to our office. Carolina Works is a little less restrictive. We are happy to add students to that program if they qualify. Simply have them email. Again, here's our address, work-study@unc.edu. Students have to be hired in JobX to participate in the program, even if they have a work study award. If they're not hired through JobX, they're not authenticated. We cannot pay students wages in those circumstances, and any funding that is processed through has to go back to the department. So please, please, please make sure that you are hiring the students through JobX before beginning letting them work. And again, they have to complete all the HR onboarding, including the I-9, W-4, NC-4, and submit to you proof that they completed their quiz with a 100% score. Just like you supervisors, students have to get a 100% score on their quiz, and they need to submit that to you before they begin work. This ensures the students are aware of the regulations and agree to abide by them. Students can only work during academic terms. Again, we've talked about the exception to this. If you hire a student for a fall spring job and they're going to be enrolled at UNC fall spring, they can work over the break in between. Any holidays where the university is closed, if you are working, the students can work. Please note can, not can be forced to, not must. If you're going to be working over, let's say, for example, this year, Thanksgiving break for a couple days and the students want to work, that's perfectly fine. While at their job, students cannot, repeat, cannot study or complete academic work. This continues to be an area of some confusion, mostly because the government named it the Work Study Program. It is meant to provide not an opportunity for students to get paid for their studies, but an opportunity to work while they are students. So absolutely zero academic work and studying done on the job while they're being paid. Those have to be kept separately. And similarly, students absolutely cannot be working while they are supposed to be in classes. If they're supposed to be in class, they cannot skip to come to work. It's simply not allowed under the regulations. Students cannot, under federal work study, operate motor vehicles. This is a big one. Carolina Works, that's absolutely fine. They can drive, but any vehicle usage is strictly prohibited under federal work study. You can see the next line, we've crossed some things out because this is some information that we want to make sure people are aware of as a change from last year. Federal work study students in previous years could not work remotely or virtually. Again, this year that is allowed under both federal work study and Carolina Works. But students must check in with their supervisor at the beginning and end of every shift. This no longer has to be in person, but they do have to check in. So for students who, for example, are going to be working a virtual position, they can send you an email, They can send you a message through Slack. They can check in if you have an online message board. They can IM you. Whatever you as a supervisor feel is an efficient system for you and your department, that is absolutely fine, as long as the student is checking in with you at the beginning of the shift, checking in with you at the end of the shift, and they are documenting that information, normally through TIM, through your established protocol. Students cannot exceed 20 hours per week and 40 hours per pay period. Pretty standard, has not changed. And students cannot earn more than their work study award. This is sort of a big issue for the program. Part of that is, again, some of the issues with tracking we've talked about, where there's a delay between students generating payroll information, that getting up to us, and us being able to take that payroll information and forward it back to you as supervisors. So we ask you as supervisors to track this very carefully and be cognizant, because we do have 10 to 12% of the program every year go over, and then we have to resolve those issues so we don't have audit findings. Whenever a student is working, you as a supervisor need to be available. This does not mean that you need to be standing right next to the student on campus, or you don't need to be on a web chat with them, staring them down through your camera if it's virtual position. No. You just have to be working. The student has to be able to reach you with questions, emergencies, requests for information. If they're working, you need to be accessible. All right. Students need to be checking students in and out of work. I know we already highlighted this, but again, it's worth mentioning because we are moving to a new system. Students have to check in, students have to check out for every shift. Primary supervisors. There is one primary supervisor on every position. They have to be a permanent, full-time faculty or staff member, or not on here if they're a member of a community service organization, a full-time permanent member of that organization. We do allow temporary employees who are full-time, whose length of appointment is longer than the student's work study appointment. So if the student is fall, spring, that supervisor needs to be employed fall, spring, plus a week or two on either end. They can be primary supervisors. Part-time grad students, absolutely not. They can't be supervisors, I'm sorry. We also allow an unlimited number of secondary supervisors on positions. They have to go through the same training. They have to go through the same quiz, restrictions, regulations all apply, but we have an unlimited number, and we highly recommend that everybody have at least one secondary supervisor. You can have as many as you want to. This is a really big benefit to supervisors and teams, because it allows, if, for example, you as the primary supervisor are out sick, or I don't know, for example, your 3.5-year-old yells and they need your attention and you can't check the student in and out, or you're going to be gone for the day. This allows a secondary supervisor to assist with getting those students into work, out of work, training them, and assisting them at work. Supervisors are responsible for ensuring the student meets the responsibilities of the position and gets paid, i.e. the buck stops with you. And you have to make sure the students don't violate any program regulations, including, again, all the onboarding. It's an issue we're anticipating this year. It has to be done before students start. Accurate hours, working only when they're supposed to, not exceeding their limits in terms of weeks and overall award. This is my happy, bad warning, unsmiley face, but bright yellow, colorful slide. What this says, in essence, is the program is contingent on federal funding. If we are not meeting the regulations, that federal funding can be taken away, and that hurts everyone in the program. In order to keep the program from being reduced in funding or defunded, we do have the right and the responsibility to remove people who aren't abiding by regulations from the program. This includes departments that allow students to over-earn their awards, not providing that funding back so that we can zero out those accounts. That's our biggest violation most times. We can and we will ask that departments be removed, and we will limit their access to JobX in future 8 years. We've only had to use this once. I hope to never have to use it again, but just so you are aware, this is our disclaimer. All right, let's get into the more fun stuff. Let's talk about planning a work study job posting. I know a lot of you, based on the names, have been with the program for a while. You're not necessarily going to be starting new programs, but there are also some names in here that I think are new. So let's briefly talk about how to set this up. For those of you who are returning, again, it's a very different year. You may be evaluating creating some new positions. Something to think about as we talk about this, how this might benefit you in conceptualizing these new positions. So the first question is always, should I participate? Again, we've hit the regulations, the restrictions, there's some logistics, but be thinking about what the student would be doing, what would that require, who would be supervising, and think about that decision. Really, is the program the best fit for you, or should potentially you be hiring through another program, the part-time employment program through University Career Services, or even a straight departmental hire. And then once you've really made that decision, you need to start thinking about, and this is the lengthy part, what is the student going to be doing? To that end, we have a job development guide created. It is on the Supervisor Resources website. It will walk you through in great detail how to come up with a description, one that is attractive and is going to benefit you by providing the best candidates. We're not going to go through that exhaustively, but I do want to run through a brief example and show you what that's going to turn into. This is the old version, but the exact same fields that are in the new version of JobX. There are two big ones here that are just the tyranny of the blank page, the job description, the job requirements, that you will need to fill up in a way that both attracts students and informs them, but isn't so exhaustive that they get bored reading it and don't apply to the position. So we want to provide a little guidance on how to make an attractive, useful job posting in these two fields. Here's a really great example. I really like this one from Beam. It's got a few things that we're going to talk about. It includes, if you can see my mouse, a link to their website for students who are interested, a really great opening line. It's very exciting. It talks about what students are going to get out of it. It provides an overview of the program. It talks about the work schedule. It gives a brief overview of the duty, and it's very clear down here in the job requirement section at the bottom what students need to be qualified. And it splits that into required things and preferred things, so students aren't intimidated by requirements that they may not have, that really are just optional or preferred for the position. So let's talk about how do you get to this phase. The first one is you simply make a list. What's the student going to be doing? What might they be doing? What won't they be doing? And you can look at other positions within your department. You can talk to current employees or students. You can make some observations, talk to other faculty, staff, whoever in the department might be working with the student, but make a big list of all the things the student could be doing and things might be doing and things they won't be doing. That'll give you a good framework. And then you're going to group those. Whatever system you use makes the most sense to you based on the position, frequency, proficiency. Obviously, you can read. Sort of combine those duties. So you take this very long, exhaustive list and kind of chunk it into some smaller zones. And then you're going to try and get some gaps and feedback on that. Talk again to the other positions who might be involved, other people who might be involved in this position, and get their feedback on it. And that should give you a really exhaustive, thoughtful list about what the students will be doing in terms of their duties. We're going to move from duties in terms of the things they will be doing to components, which are the individual actions and tasks that might be shared across those duties. And then we're going to break those down a little further into what we call KSAOs. These are knowledge, skills, abilities, and other factors, things students need to know, things students need to be competent at doing, things students need to have as innate abilities, and then of course those obvious other factors, things that are always idiosyncratic or unique to the position. And then we're going to sort of map those out. I'm going to run through this real briefly. This is from our friends at the UNC Visitor Center, their position. We're going to look at two of those job tasks. We're going to break it down into components and KSAOs. As you can see here, they answer a lot of visitor questions. That breaks down into two things. Students need to know how to work with customers, and they need to know about the campus itself. You can see here a big long list of the KSAOs associated with each of those things. Second duty, they also answer these questions via email. Again, there's still some customer service. There's some campus referral, but there's also a software component to this, interfacing through email. To do this exhaustively, you would take all of your duties, you would break these down, and then you would sort of look at where these KSAOs link up. Sometimes they're one-to-one. Sometimes there's some that are close that you can group together. Sometimes there's one-to-many. Some of them are often isolated, but this gives you a breakdown of chunking out those requirements of the position. And then, of course, you're just going to organize them. Again, like we talked about, you've got duties, you've got the components, the individual proportions that make up those duties in the KSAOs. And this is going to allow you to write your thoughtful, well-defined, very reasonable job description. So we're going to build a posting out of this. And the goal is something descriptive, clear, succinct, that provides a good overview of the job. If that's not good enough, here's what you really want to think about. What does the student want to know? If you were a new student, you knew nothing about this position, what would you want to know and what would you ask? If you can answer those two questions, you're coming up with a really great posting. Again, there's two sections to this. You need to be thinking about the description, which are the duties and components, and then the requirements, which are the factors. Here's if you're looking for a recommendation, this is how I would break it down and how I do it in our positions. We provide a brief overview of the goals in the work, i.e., what's the point of the job? How's the student going to help it happen? What does the student get out of it? Do not underestimate. Students are really looking for, as future professional employees, what are the benefits of this position to them? In some cases, your position may just be a paycheck. We certainly hope not, because these positions are meant to be developmental. But are they advancing the student's knowledge of the field? Are they making the student more educated? Are they providing networking, resources, mentoring? Is this a stepping stone to a better job? What are you offering the student? Work environment location is key, especially for our on-campus positions. Knowing where the job is in relation to where the student spends their days, very, very big. You also, I would recommend, it's not required, if you have a website, linking back to that so interested students can get more information. This normally shows up in the interviews when you have a very interested student. And then some atypical elements if you have them. For example, if there's some risk factors, like in a lot of our labs where you're handling hazardous material, or if, for example, you are one of our facilities and resources student positions, and you're actually going to be walking all around campus checking fire extinguishers in 90-degree weather with 80% humidity. Good for the student to know that ahead of time. And then, of course, the job requirements. My schema that I recommend is this sort of required, preferred, optional set, so you can break down exactly what the students have to have, you'd like them to have, and what would be good for them to have in terms of KSAOs. All right, all of that is going to go into, like we talked about, those top two boxes right up here, job descriptors. And there's also a set of information below that called job logistics that you need to be aware of when setting up your positions. Most of these you're going to know. They're fairly intuitive, like the number of hours a week your students are going to be working, how many positions you want to hire for, certain things like that, and our job logistics. All right, so we are very shortly going to move into the job creation. I just want to take a second at this point to make sure that we are clear on one thing in the program that I feel like gets missed out on sometimes. And this is straight out of the FSA handbook, this quote: "To the maximum extent practicable, work-study positions must complement and reinforce each recipient's education program or career goals." In other words, yes, these are jobs, but the intent of this program is really to help develop these students as professionals. We have taken some steps to ensure that is built into the job descriptions, the evaluations. We have some additional resources that we offer students to help with this, but we really do need your help as the supervisors in partnering and making sure that these positions are developing the students, not just providing them with work. To do that, we use the JobX system. It is not, as some people think, part of UNC. It is a third-party product offered by NextGen, and we just had an update. You might be asking, why do we use JobX? Why don't we just put these through one of our many campus positions, either the jobs at UNC or Handshake, which we use for a lot of our student positions? And let me show you why. This is a brief section of all the things that have to go into these job postings, and ensuring that all of these show up in either of the previously mentioned systems is problematic. And the review period for that would be quite lengthy. So we use JobX. And if you fill out all the required fields on JobX, it ensures that all of these regulations are met, all of the required information is put into the system, everything that you need to have in that posting is ready to go. All right, we're going to start our groundbreaking, brave, new play at home part of the presentation, wherein we are going to post jobs. We're going to go through a demonstration. I'm going to post one live on our development website, and if you're following along at home and you've got your job description ready, you'll be able to either set up a new job or take one of your current positions and have it ready to go for the 2021 aid year. The website for our JobX site is right there at the top. If you want to type that in, you can also Google UNC Work Study. It's one of the top 4 links in almost every case, and it will be the one that ends in .ng Web Solutions. The others will be to our new, beautiful, super accessible OSSA Work Study website. So here is what the screen is going to look like, this bottom image, and you're going to want to click right here, this big Work Study Supervisor sign. That's going to take you to this page. As you can see, wonderful, accessible, better formatted, tagged, wonderful page, our Work Study Supervisor resources site. There's a lot of great things on here. As you'll note, on the left side, there's all of our training. Again, there's links back to our regulatory training, our JobX training, annual update guide was the quiz, a brief view of the rules and regulations. It is equivalent to what we ran through this morning, and then a link to all of our work study resource videos, which we are in the process of updating now that our site looks different. Here are more resources in the middle. We already talked about the job posting development guide. This is everything from some skills, a list that you will see very shortly, down to our evaluation form, so it is beginning to end. But what we're really looking for today is this JobX link on the right side. If you will click on that, it will bring up our JobX login page, which you will then use your onion to click into. I, however, am going to be going to our development page, which looks very similar. There we go, share that with you. But instead of using an onion, of course, because it is a testing page, I am going to log in slightly differently. Sorry, folks, this takes just a second. The development resources aren't quite there, but this gives you a chance to catch up to your site. Here we go. All right. Ooh, yes, because it's a testing site, it's not secure. Here's what we're going to look at. I am going to do two things today. We're going to set up a new job, and then we are going to update and reactivate a previous job from a previous semester. So to add a job, first thing we're going to do is click this nice blue little add a job button, pretty clear, and we're going to choose our job type. You'll note there are two, Federal Work Study or Carolina Works. For some of you who are off-campus community service partners, these won't say on-campus, they will say off-campus. The point is you have Federal Work Study and Carolina Works, and this is the one point where you can make this alteration. After this point, you cannot go back and change something from Federal Work Study to Carolina Works or vice versa. We're going to set out a Federal Work Study job today. Click on the blue button to go to the next step. And this is those 18, these are the 18 fields we previously talked about, the job descriptions and the job logistics. I was very smart, as I hope all of you are, and I'm sure you will be, and thought about this, followed my own protocol, wrote up my job ahead of time, so that it's very simple to copy and paste this information over. And that's important because this site operates on a timer. You've got about 30 minutes to get through all this, or the site will time out, and any information that you've painstakingly typed into this window will be gone forever, unfortunately. We don't want that. I don't want that for you. So please make sure you're taking a little time, fill out that information, put it in a Word document, have it ready to go. All right, job category. This is a very, very searchable field that students use to get a look at the different types of positions that, interest them. You will note in the system live right now, a recent change that we made just before we opened on June 1st is we have two sets of all these positions now. There's one that says on campus and then these categories. The other says virtual and then these categories. That is to help students who are not going to be returning to campus but will be working virtually find those positions a little easier. I wasn't able to display that here because they updated the test site before they did the live site, obviously, and we had to make those changes live to our site. So we're going to take a research job. You'll note there's two categories. This is one of the hands-on practical research instead of just research support, where the students are actually generating data. And for those of you who have read through my example evaluation, you'll be quite familiar with my fascination with the Otter Pup Behavioral Technician position. No, it does not exist, but yes, it is fun to think about. And we have a very similar position actually for sea turtles on campus. Interesting stuff. All right, I've written out my description ahead of time, and I'm going to just drop it in here. You'll note it follows some of the rules that I talked to you about. I have a brief opening that talks about the position in exciting terms, what students are going to get out of it. I have links to, I have links to a fake lab. If you actually clicked on this, it's just a picture of otters, our biology department, a little more in-depth overview of what students are doing, and then a point-by-point list of their duties. You'll note some of these are required. I've got timelines on them. And then there's an optional one down here to make clear which duties aren't required. And then I make a note about the unusual conditions in the location for the position, just to provide sort of that really good overview. Moving down to my job requirements. Go ahead and paste these as well. No, not print. Sorry, folks. There goes what was a semi-smooth and now is not smooth presentation. Here we go. There we are. You'll note I am practicing what I preach. I'm using required, preferred, and optional requirements to display my KSAO knowledge, skill, ability, and other factors here. This ensures that students who are reviewing the position instantly know whether or not they're qualified, and it doesn't confuse preferred qualifications, things I really would like students to have, with required things they absolutely have to have so that students can self-screen out. Learning outcomes, as we pointed out, these positions are really meant to be developmental. They're not just for pay. They really are to develop student skills. As such, we took the step a few years ago of building in learning outcomes to the positions so that students can actually know what skills they're building, and these learning outcomes are evaluated on our semesterly evaluations to give students a sense of progress, and they can take those evaluations and these job postings to University Career Services, who helps show and inform students how to illustrate that growth on their resume. For those of you who are interested, these are based on the NACE career competencies, which are 8 areas that supervisors have actively shown they are looking for college graduates to possess. You can just Google NACE career competencies if you want more information. I used the learning outcome tool on our Supervisor Resources website to pull up the list, and I went and I picked out my learning outcomes ahead of time. So rather than scrolling through the 100, and I think we have 130 different skills and learning outcomes here, this allows me just to type those in. Now you'll note some of them they all fall into different categories. Again, these are based on those NACE career competencies, and there are some duplicates. But really what we're looking for is that you've thought through the position and shown students what is it that they're developing in this position. Once I have my outcomes, I'm going to use my keywords. This is a set of items that, just like a Twitter hashtag search, students can use to find the positions. Some of them are very general categories, you'll note. I've got the department. I've got just hashtag research. And then I've got some tags in here that if a student was interested in finding the position, hashtag River Critters Lab, which is the fictional lab this is under, it's very easy for students to find typing that in. No one else has River Critters Lab. Something clever and fun is a very easy way to get students that you're referring to these positions, and it makes it easier for them to find it. There is a character limit on this. It's quite long, so please feel free to have fun with this. Go bonkers. Number of available openings, I'm looking for 4 in this case. A word to those of you who are listening: we don't restrict you on the number of openings. All that we ask is you don't hire more students than you have work for. So if you know that you need 32 hours worth of work done and you're not sure whether you're going to need 2 students, 8 students, 12 students, you can put in for 12 or 15 positions. And as you're hiring students and finding out their availability, you can simply just not hire for every open posting. Once you have all your students, you can move this job into review, and that will prevent applicants from applying to the position. I have calculated up, I need students for about an hour to an hour and a half a day, which works out to somewhere between 8 and 15 hours per week. This is not a promise. You're not saying that students will always have 15 hours. There are some weeks where there might not be work. Some weeks there might be up to 20 hours, but this is an estimation of your average week, how many hours per week students are going to work. Time frame, very important. If this is a work-study job, please make sure to pick one of these FWS or fall only or spring only tags. Please don't choose Summer Carolina Works or Carolina Works. Vice versa, if you have a Carolina Works job, please don't choose a federal work-study tag. Fall and spring work for both programs. Now we get to pick the wages. Those of you who've been with the program for a while know you used to pick a wage, send it to Thomas and I. We would look at it. We would use an evaluation scale. We might send it back to you with a different wage. There would be some back and forth. We found out that wasn't productive. It was frustrating people. So we moved to a position where you, the job experts, actually are going to go through the tool that we used to use and pick out the correct scale. There are 12 questions. Each question asks you about which of these 4 pay levels is appropriate for the job. So experience, previous training, I'm just picking these at random, task structure, task responsibility, learning, supervision, judgment, special duties. Of course, you'll want to read through these a little more closely. Common and job-specific skills, specialized abilities, and any other factors to pay attention to. You hit this compute button, and it will tell you the appropriate level based on what you told me is this. We have 4 different levels. Within this level, you as the supervisor are free to pick any wage rate for the individual student. That gives you some flexibility according to students' individual abilities, proclivities, experience, so on and so forth. But the ranges are actually set based on these 12 questions. Close the window. We now get to put in our weekly schedule. This is an optional set of fields. You don't have to use it. It is quite informative for students. I like to encourage supervisors to put this information in simply because it makes sure everybody's on the same page about how many hours per week and what days per week students are going to be working, which is a very, very big thing in students self-screening themselves into and out of the positions before they apply. Primary contact person. Again, this is your work study supervisor with whom the buck stops. Normally it's the person posting the job. Hopefully you're not sneaking in, signing up somebody else like your boss for these positions so that if something goes wrong, it's on them. But that is absolutely possible. This is a phone number. It is a required field. It does not have to be your personal cell phone. Of course, it can be the lab number or an online Google phone, whatever you are comfortable putting out. Fax number. You don't have to put in a fax number. It's good to do. A work email at unc.edu, and then a location is required. If you are putting in a virtual position, please start with the word virtual. This is another way we are encouraging students to look for positions in addition to the job type. This position is not virtual, so I won't be putting that in. I will be putting in a fictional location in Big Muddy Hall because I grew up next to the Big Muddy River in East Texas. So, and then you have the option for secondary contacts. Again, I would encourage each and every person to put in secondary contacts because, brief nerd moment, it is dangerous to go alone. Yes, I squeezed in a Legend of Zelda reference, a Hobbit reference, and Pearl Art all in the same slide. Forgive my brief nerdy moment. Hopefully you got a laugh out of that. But again, we would encourage you to pick secondary supervisors just in case the primary is ever unavailable. This allows students to work checking in with the secondary supervisor. I'm going to select multiple people here at once. And then the question, do you wish to collect online applications for this job? The answer is always yes. If you don't collect online applications, you've put out an informational posting, but students cannot apply to the posting. So you always want to make sure this default yes box is checked. You'll hit submit, and that is the conclusion of step 1 of 3. Again, there's a timer on this. You have 30 minutes to get it all done, but again, it is much easier to go ahead and write it all up ahead of time. This is the default application that we set up, and luckily the timer button here shows. Part of this cannot be changed, part of this can. It's a pretty good set of information. You may not want to use all of these questions. That's absolutely fine. Do you care what the student's starting and ending salary at their previous position was? Maybe not. So let's say, for example, we want to get rid of that. We're going to click on this. We're going to remove that question. Bye-bye. And of course, it goes away. If we don't have starting salary, we may not want ending salary. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Let's say you really care about references. We're going to use this little option button on the right. We're going to move that around, move question up. And you would simply click to keep moving that up. It takes a little bit of time, but you can get it there. So we can remove questions. We can reorder questions. The other thing we can do is we can add questions using this menu down here. I want to create a new question, and I simply want to find out, because this is an otter pup behavioral technician position, if they know what an otter is. We are going to have a very quick and easy question. You can see there's several different formats to pick from, including some uploads. Those of you who are looking for web resources people, video editors, photo editors, content creators, this is a place that you can actually get them to upload samples. Very helpful for some people in the past. So I'm going to pick my question type. I'm going to say question is previous otter experience. And I'm going to put in here, simple question, have you previously worked with an otter in any capacity? Dun, dun, dun. I'm not going to leave a default value. I'm not going to leave an expression. I am going to require the student to fill out this question. I'm going to add it to the second part. Required. This pre-fill from a question from previous answer. This is if they are filling out multiple applications at once and they enter it on one question, it can move over. If I was hiring for 3 different levels of otter pup behavioral technician, I might check this box. And I want to add it to right after, oh, where's a good place? Right after their cover letter. I'm going to go ahead and add that question. So here, if we scroll up, we can now see resume, cover letter, have you previously worked with an otter in any capacity? And they have to fill in that information, and they have to fill in twice because I wanted a confirmation and it is required. All right, after you have set up your application the way you want to, we're going to click Save. It's going to take a little bit of a second. Moving over here, and this is the last set of pieces on posting a job. It's 4 questions. I can tell you the answers. When do you want the job posted? Now. If you check later, it will be contingent upon you to go back, find this screen again, send it to Thomas and I so we can inspect it. Do you want it posted immediately? The answer is yes, because the other option is putting it in storage, and storage is going to undo some of the work, like how many positions the student, or how many positions you want to hire for will go to 0. Do you want to send job mail? The answer is normally yes. It might be no. It's entirely up to you. We are unable to send job mail until the system opens on July 20th, because job mail only goes out to students who currently have access. Those of you who might be wondering what job mail is, it is simply an email sent from JobX to students who have indicated they are interested in a certain type of job based on hours per week, pay, job type, so on and so forth. And then for how many days do you want the job to be listed? You want to put until I close the job. You can always go back in and move the job out from a posted position to review at any point, and that effectively closes off your applications. We're going to click our blue button at the end, and hey, the job is ready to go. I can take a look at it, click here, and it brings up the position. Always good to review it for, misspelled words, changes, things you might want to adjust, like, oh, I put 8 to 6. Maybe I should have put in, I want to work Monday, Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I don't know why they'd be confused about that, but it's possible. We can always go back here, and then we can return to the control panel. And as you can see, if I go here under my pending approval jobs, here is the Otter Pup Behavioral Technician job we just listed. Now, I'd like to point out this says pending approval. This is not live. Thomas and or I still have to go back in and inspect the job before it will be visible to students, at which point it goes to listed. The position can also be moved to review. Okay. What I want to show you right now is I want to take one of these old jobs in storage, Otter Pup Behavioral Technician I set up yesterday. And this is something like an old job from last year that we want to get listed. So I'm going to show you that demonstration now for people in the presentation who might be updating the previous year's job. If you look up here, the status of this job is in storage. Storage, review, pending approval, none of these are visible to students. You have to get it into listed. And as you'll note right here, it says, I cannot list the job. It has 0 openings. I'm going to need to edit this job. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to click the edit button. I would scroll through. I would make sure there's nothing I need to update in any of these fields. I'm going to update this to 4. I'm going to check all of these. We're going to assume that nothing has changed. I'm going to hit submit. All right. Notice the job is still in storage. I updated the job. I did not submit it. So all I need to do to get the job in the queue for inspection, click on this little listed button. You know, these are vaguely reminiscent of the questions we just looked at with the new job. Want to list it on immediately. We do want to send job mail. I want to open until, or I want the job listed until I say close it. I'm going to save that information and look, it is now pending approval. So if I log out of here, and I go back into this website as, instead of Josh the, oops, sorry, wrong link. Josh the testing person. Sorry. Getting rid of Josh the testing supervisor. I'm going to go back in as Josh the program administrator. apologize, folks. Tried to put some shortcuts in, and it didn't work out. Lesson. I'm going to go back in as Josh, the program administrator. I will be able to see those 2 jobs in the pending approval queue once it logs me in. Here we go, pending approval. Here are our 2 OtterPup behavioral technicians, and Thomas or I will go through and we will make a very good sweep of this. We will approve the job. As you can see here, we'll put it into listed. We will always make sure it's listed until you close it. We will send job mail if it's after the system opens, and we will put an email in here to send to you. All right, that is how to create a job, how to update a job. And let's talk about next things. Quite briefly, we have another training on July 16th. We're going to go back through for people who are unable to attend. An overview of the program, registration, training, our updates, our rules and regs. Instead of talking about how to post jobs, we're going to talk about how to hire students at that point. We're also going to go into training on wage tracking, over-earning prevention, because as I mentioned, that's the biggest issue we see with the program are students who over-earn their awards. We're going to talk about evaluations. And then we're going to spend some time doing something that we haven't had a chance to do in previous years, which is talking about development and management of students. Knowing that we will have virtual students, we will have a very odd semester with social distancing and high flex classes and so on and so forth. We really want to talk about how to help your students develop in person and remotely, how to manage them when maybe you're not seeing them the frequency you used to, and talking about how to flesh out these positions to help students develop as professionals in keeping with the program's tenets. And then, of course, we'll talk about a Q&A and any future planned sessions. This is going to be the end of the recording, so I'm going to stop that right now.